Hi, I'm Virginia Senator Mark Warner, and I'd like to thank my friend, former DNI Mike McConnell, for asking me to speak at this important symposium on cyber competition with the great powers. I want to also commend so many in Florida who are involved in this conference, and I want to give a big shout out to my partner and good friend, Senator Marco Rubio, for joining in this important event. The goal of this conference, I know, is to look at near-peer competitors in the realm of cyber. We've seen our overall intelligence and security focus shift from the counterterrorism threat more and more to the similar peer or near peer adversaries rise. We see that with Russia, China, but with also secondary forces, but still dangerous, like Iran and North Korea. And nowhere is this more evident in the cyber domain. Cyber is truly an area of asymmetric combat, where a lesser power, by throwing smart people with willingness to take risks against an adversary like the United States, at times gives them an advantage. And we need to recognize that our need to have better cyber hygiene across all aspects of our government, all aspects of private industry, all of our individual actions as well. Something as simple as making sure you guard against spear phishing or occasionally powering off your devices. All things we can do to make sure we remain more secure. I want to talk a little bit about some of my priorities for the committee, but also how they relate to this issue of great power cyber competition. First, with China. The remarkable thing is with China, we have to realize we have an adversary that not only is contesting us in the military domain, but unlike the Soviet Union or unlike Russia, is actually trying to compete with us in the economic domain and technology domains. China has made remarkable progress over the last 25 to 30 years, where now they have laid out very clearly in their China 2025 document, where they hope to compete and win against not only America, but the West in areas like 5G, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and a host of other new technology areas. And the way China is doing that? Well, one, yes, they're investing, in many cases, hundreds of billions of dollars. They've got incredibly bright people and a great deal of technological talent inside China, but they also do it by massive amounts of intellectual property theft, by using cyber. We've seen China be the adversary behind things like the OPM hack and the Equifax hack. We've got to do a better job of protecting against this challenge. One of the things that I've been promoting is trying to ensure that as we look at China, we need to dramatically increase our investment in each of these technology areas. We also need to partner with allied nations around the world that are democracies to recognize that working together on technology advancement, we can control and beat back the technological challenge that China presents. Part of that as well goes right into the cyber domain, where we need to find and determine certain levels of cyber norms and actions with our allies so that if China steals intellectual property from America or Britain or from South Korea, they know they will face a unified response. The failure for us to have cyber norms across the global environment gives, again, China that asymmetric advantage. In the case of Russia, we also see enormous challenges. We see Russia use tools of misinformation and disinformation, oftentimes manipulating our social media platforms in terms of election interference, for example, in 2016. We've also seen Russia, in terms of its intel agencies, bring world-class first-tier challenges against us in the cyber domain. A prime example of how we have to deal with Russia is dealing with the SolarWinds hack. Clearly, when you're dealing with a first-tier adversary, like the Russian intel agencies can present, many of our businesses and even much of our government is potentially vulnerable. SolarWinds is a prime example. Getting into the SolarWinds product line put them into 18,000 companies around America and around the world. Now, the good news was the SolarWinds hack ended up appearing closer to espionage than a full-scale nation-state attack the way Russia permeated against Ukraine with the NotPetya attack. But the fact that Russia, in the case of SolarWinds, only decided to extract information from a relatively small subset of that 18,000 entities that they were able to hack into means that we escaped in this time. But the truth is, Russia could have used this same malware, they could have used this same penetration into 18,000 entities to move that from a typical espionage effort to one that really goes into a full denial of service. If that had been a denial of service attack against 18,000 enterprises across the country and across the world, it could have brought our economy literally to a halt. It could have, as shutting down power systems or water systems, could have resulted, for example, in death and destruction. Again, we need, one, to make clear where our red lines are in cyber, so that whether it be Russia or China, Iran or North Korea, if they violate those red lines, they know what kind of response that will come from the United States and our allies. And domestically, I think it's time for us to acknowledge that the landscape that we set up 5 or 6 years ago in this country, to say, in terms of cyber attacks, we're going to rely simply on voluntary information sharing, is not cutting it. In the case of SolarWinds again, but for the affirmative bringing forward of information by a cybersecurity firm, FireEye, coming to the United States government and telling us about this hack, we might still be ignorant to the fact of an adversary's presence across our networks. So that's why I'm working in concert with Senator Rubio and others to see, can we develop a incident level reporting system modeled after the National Transportation Safety Board, a public-private enterprise where we would put those cloud computing companies, those key cyber defense companies in the private sector, along with some of our key public sector entities like the FBI and CISA, potentially others, so that mid-incident there would be a mandatory reporting requirement for government contractors and for critical infrastructure. That with that reporting there would be a liability protection. There might even be the ability to keep some level of confidentiality, so that mid-incident we could pulse all of the system, public sector and private sector, to make sure that we ferret out the kind of attack that took place with SolarWinds or that China recently conducted against Microsoft with Hafnium. We've got to make sure that we stand up to this kind of challenge. It's going to require a public-private combination. It's going to require, as I said at the outset, better cyber hygiene on an individual basis, a corporate basis, and a governmental basis. It's going to require, I believe, every public company to have someone on their board that has cyber expertise and knowledge. It's going to also require us to continue to invest in basic research and development and continue to make sure that the literally tens of thousands of unfilled cyber jobs across this country get filled. This issue of how we protect ourselves against these powers, the Russias, the Chinas, and the Irans and North Koreas in the cyber domain, has to be a top priority of both the intelligence community, the DoD, but for that matter, the private sector as well. And I look forward to the results of this conference to lay out other ideas and how we can work together in a collaborative fashion to make sure that our information, our intellectual property, our personal information are all safe in a digital and interconnected world. Thanks again for having me, and I look forward to the results of this conference.